awesome, awesome group. It's so good to see all of you showing up today. Give yourself 2 claps. Now, raise your hand if you were here last week. Raise your hand if you were not here last week. Okay. So we're going to do a quick review of last week's leadership lesson. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it, but it is important that we have a little bit understanding of where we're coming from in this thing. Because remember I told the story about the suitcase? You guys remember the story? Yeah. And it was really, of course, a whole lesson with a theme that was far greater than the story about the suitcase. But the suitcase illustrated what could happen. And remember I told that funny story where I said I was in the Army and I used to be with generals, and I got to the airport and grabbed a bag that looked like my bag, and when I got to my room to change, it wasn't my bag. And remember, we talked about the fact, it was kind of a funny fact, but a sad fact too, that not only were the clothes too small, but they were women's clothes. And then we had a discussion about what I should do about that. And we talked about what could happen if I would have just gone to the meeting in the clothes. And there was a very lively discussion. You guys gave a great discussion of it. But the point of the story was that it's a bad thing to try to fit into somebody else's clothing. And it's a bad thing to try to fit into somebody else's life. Remember, the way I presented it in last week's lesson was, what if you woke up one day and realized that that had happened in your life? That you were living somebody else's suitcase? And we talked about the fact that God has designed each and every one of us for a very specific and unique purpose. And it's not the same specific and unique purpose. Each person has a separate calling. And we said that this week we were going to dive further into that, and that's what we're here to do. Okay? So, in the first line, there's only one you. There's only one you. And we know, yes, and if you do not have pins, and we don't have enough pins, you're going to kind of have to share a little bit. Just put them. Okay? Can we kind of get enough pins out here so we can share? Just to give me your pins. Your shirt, you're going to share with Hunter. Here we go. You two can share. All right. Here's one more. Okay, now listen up, guys. We know that there's only one you. We know that there's only one you in so many different ways. Like you guys know already from your school training, I know that you know that nobody else has a fingerprint like you. Nobody. That fingerprint is unique to only you. And we know that it's true of something called DNA in your body. We know scientifically that there's all kinds of ways, scientifically and biologically, that there's only one you. The purpose of this discussion, though, is that in the most important way, there's only one you. That is, there's only one person that was designed for the specific calling that you have. Specifically what you're meant to do with your life. It's exciting to get this message as young as some of you are. Because unfortunately some people grow up and figure out when they're 40 or 50 years old that they never figured that out. Right? So it's really, really cool if you can figure out what that's going to be for you early on. You need to, what, Melissa? What do you think, Bradley?
You need
What do you think, Jared?
be the best you can.
And that's it. You need to be you. Good job. You need to be you. And you're absolutely right, Jared. You also need to be the best you can be. Which we're going to get on to. But right now, what I want you to take is you need to be you. And here's what I mean by that, guys. And by the way, I'm going to give a second so you can write it down so that then I can see everybody's eyes on me so I make sure that you don't miss it. Because as cool as it is that you got the cool note-taking device and you'll get to take this home with you so you can show mom and dad and talk to them about it, it's not nearly as important that you understand what I'm saying. Okay? You know, this means, because, Gabby, you thought to yourself, well, it's the same thing. It says the same thing. Actually, this one says there is only one you, and this one says you can't be anyone else. You can't be your father, or your brother, or your sister, or your hero, or your teacher. You can admire those people. You can want to be like those people in the sense of copying certain traits. You can look to your sensei or your Shihan and say, I want to be like him in certain ways. But what you cannot do is be somebody other than who you are and who God created you to be. Do you guys understand that?
Sir.
You have to live your own life. But wouldn't you agree that if we say that, well, we have to be us, it's important that we begin to understand who we are. Now, I'll be honest, this exercise I'm about to take you through, it is going to take more time for Sensei Phil, right? And for other adults in the crowd, Thomas that just walked in, and Sensei Julie, and all the adults in the crowd, because they got more to look back to. Some of you will have less to look to, but you know, the neat thing is you can look to the past and you can look to the future. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at your story. The author of the book that was the source for this, Max Lucado, says that you can figure out your story by reading it backwards. He says you look back and you can, by what happened in your life, you can kind of figure out who you're supposed to be. Now let's talk about what that means. The acronym STORY, who knows what an acronym is? Share with everybody. Go ahead, Gabby. I mean, go ahead, Ali.
It's like a series of words that are put together into one short phrase that's like each letter stands for.
Exactly, just like this, each letter stands for something. And did you like the way I illustrated the fact, Ali, that even though you're Gabby's little sister, and I know you'll be as great as her one day, that you can't be Gabby. Even if I try to call you Gabby, you really can't be her. You can only be Ali. Wouldn't you agree that is true?
Yes.
Give Ali 2 claps. So the S stands for what are your strengths? And the way that I challenge you, the Max Lucado talks about in the book, and the way that I challenge you to figure that out is to think back to different times in your life. And as I said, Winston, if you're 8 years old, it's not like you can go back that far, but you still can go back and say, what are the things that I have been really good at? What, in fact, down here on your note sheet, you'll notice that it says your knapsack. What that means is, God didn't give you a knapsack, He gave you a knapsack. The things that you have a knack for. Right? The things that come so easily to you that you can't understand why other people don't get it. You look at other people and you go, why is that so hard for them? It's so easy. But yet that particular subject, that particular thing is hard for other people. Those are your knacks. Those are your strengths. Those are your attributes. Those are the things that you have naturally in you that you're meant to use. Let me give you some examples. Who has something that they know they have a knack for that comes harder to other people? Jared.
Talking in public, sir.
Talking in public, that's a good one. Nico.
Science.
Science, you're good at science. Yes. Math, good. Who's got some other ones? Kyle, what's another one? Another math person. Wow, we got a lot of smart mathematicians in here. Winston. What is it?
Science and social studies.
Okay. Science and social studies, cool. Al?
Karate.
Karate, good. Good. Bradley?
Science, reading, history, language arts, and math.
Wow. Okay. Now, what about this, though? What about, like, let me give you some examples of what I mean. And I'm going to use the examples in the negative, not in the sense of being negative. You guys know I'm never negative. But in the sense of, what are the things that I definitely don't have knacks for? Let me tell you. You don't have to tell me. I'll tell you. Let me tell you one. Is my accountant loves sitting down and crunching all my numbers. Like, I can bring a box of stuff to my accountant, and he'll be so excited sitting there doing that. But I would go crazy. There's no way I could sit and do my own tax report at the end of the year. It's just not something that I have a knack for. Yet, like Jared said, I can get up in front of you and give this kind of class and I don't feel nervous at all. Whereas some other people would be very frightened to do this very same thing. You guys understand?
Yes, sir.
So the first thing is you think about what are those things in your life. And by the way, they might be school subjects, they might be sports, they might be something that happened in church or in your family or in any other place. It doesn't matter when or where or how it happened. It matters that you identify those periods in your life where you were operating from a place of strength. You guys understand?
Yes, sir.
The next one is, what is your T? And that is your topic. And the notes that I put down here for that are, once you know your verbs, look for your nouns. So in other words, we already identified that, you know, some people are strong at crunching numbers. And some people are strong at speaking publicly. And some people are strong at writing. And some people are strong at reading. And some people are strong at helping others. And some people are strong at leading. Those are the verbs. Then you have to identify the nouns. Do you like working with people? Do you like working with cars? Do you like working with animals? Do you like working with, you have to figure out, you go and you figure out what are the things, what excites me? What makes my pulse race? What are the things? And you have to do it by thinking back so that you're honest with yourself. Because believe it or not, sometimes if you just answer without really thinking about it, you may, not on purpose, but on accident, lie to yourself. But if you go back and you think, you know, and like I said, I mean, how old are you, Hunter? Huh? How old are you?
Oh, 8.
8. So you're only 8 years old too, right? But you look back and you say, when I was, you know, what my whole life, what have I really liked? Do I like being with people? Do I like being with animals? Do I like, right? And you figure that out. Right?
It's not just what you like, but also it's what you can remember. Because, like, you can't really remember very vividly. For me, like, 5 and up I can remember, but younger than 5.
No, that's okay. And consider that things. And by the way, for the adults in the crowd, for both of these exercises that we've done so far, you're supposed to do them for childhood, youth, and adulthood. Because there'll be an evolution there. But you'll also find certain commonalities, certain stories that tell themselves again and again and again. The next is, what are your optimal conditions? What are your optimal conditions? So once we know the things that we're good at, and we know the topics that excite us, the next thing is, what kind of working conditions excite us? Like, you know, there are the types of jobs that, like fire truck, you know, fireman, like a fireman or a paramedic. Think of those kinds of people, the 911 type professions, right? Where it's very fast moving and it's very urgent and it's very, right? And there's jobs that require hard work and focus and leadership, and then there's jobs that are much more quiet, right? The notes I put on here for you were building or maintaining. In other words, some people are really good at starting, they're just not good at maintaining, right? So they go and they build something, and then they leave it to somebody else to run. They go and they build it again and leave it to somebody else to run, right? Do you like structure? Do you like a lot of structure in your job? Like, hey, you come in, I come in every day, I sit down, some other I. I sit down, I get behind my computer, I do this from this to that time, I do that from this to that time, I do this, I do that, and I go home at 5, and that's the way I like it. Or, on the other hand, do you like open-ended opportunities? Like, you want to see every single day what happens. What's going to happen tomorrow? And does that excite you, right? Do you like working inside, or do you like working outside? I mean, you don't know working yet, but do you like playing inside, or do you like playing outside? What are the types of things that excite you? Fast or slow? I already talked about 911 excitement, or quiet and orderly. And then finally, what about relationships? Instead of me taking off on this one, let me ask an informal question. What kind of things in your story you think can tell you a little bit about the kinds of relations and relationships that you'd like to live your life and work in? Jared?
By that, do you mean like it's not the same conditions like because we're indoors.